Okay, so I just saw a video that ended up, going and talking about an issue of somebody considering not having a child with their spouse because of the factor that their father had molested their sister. Alright? Now, obviously a difficult topic to begin with, but, you know, everyone always ends up going ahead and talking about nuances when it comes to, consent and, you know, all the variables that come along with, the consequences of sex, even. All right? That circumstance, in my opinion, that is the utmost unexcusable. All right? The reason why. All right? Considering the factor that that was his daughter. All right? Literally, that eliminates any potential excuses that even could be made, you know, to try to justify the behavior. All right? Like, for example, can't claim, well, they lied about their age. Because keep in mind, if somebody lies to you about their age, that right there, that's what's called coerced consent. All right? That's when you omit information or manipulate the details of, and leave out any type of transparency of any information that could actively get somebody to go ahead and decide not to engage or participate in an activity, or any type of conversation or anything, all right? That with the information omitted, that they were deceived, they would not actively engage in, all right? So obviously, because of the factor that, the obviously that father, it was their child. If they tried, using the excuse or saying, oh, she lied about her age. Literally, the first question that would pop into my mind would be, "You're her father. How do you not know how old she is?" But the point that I'm making on that is definitely nothing wrong with the person that was like, "Yeah, we're gonna hold off on having a kid because now that I know that detail about your father, which you not giving me that information, you know." And her justification was, well, it was a very dark time in his life, and, it happened a couple of decades ago. Okay, everyone has dark times in their life, you know? We all have some form of trauma or another. Nobody has had the perfect carefree life, no matter how much, from outside perspective, you know, somebody who may have it easier than somebody else could perceive it, you know? But there are plenty of people that have been, for example, deceived into, like ending up with somebody that, ended up lying about their age or ended up being somewhere where there was an age restriction that if they were honest and upfront about their age, that they wouldn't have been in the first place, which ultimately those spaces that are meant specifically for, engagement with adults are meant for, you know? Like, for example, I know people go ahead and they look down on, clubs and bars and everything, but the reality is, by going ahead and having clubs and having bars, those are spaces meant for adults. So it's a space that ultimately, with being adults, that it's supposed to be unspoken that, yes, this is a space where anybody and everyone is over the legal drinking age. You know, everyone's over the legal voting age. Everyone can legally consent here, unless, of course, they end up going ahead and getting belligerent, in which case, even if they do end up consenting to, any type of activities, that include physical intimacy, that it should not be accepted, them saying, oh, I consent. Because at that point, you need to go ahead and say, hey, listen, you're inebriated, so ultimately, I know you may be saying that you consent, but I personally don't know exactly how intoxicated you are, so I don't know if you are fully capable of being able to consent. So, my point on that is, ultimately, in that incestuous situation, there literally is no excuse for it, It's insane to me, the amount of people that go ahead and end up going into public outrage, while meantime, how few people apparently are actually educated on consent, that don't understand what coerced consent is, that don't understand, ultimately the factor of all the minute details that come along with consent, and automatically go ahead and jump to shame, being like, no, this is who that person is. And it's like, no, whether or not, you like to admit it, there are a lot of circumstances that people that go ahead and paint themselves out to be a victim, if they in any which way, shape, or form lied or omitted any type of information or details that would have actively ended up making the person that's being, perceived as the perpetrator to disengage. Like, for example, acting like they were capable of being able to consent in a manner that they had no legal capability or culpability to be able to consent in, It's like the same thing as, basically, imagine like a 15-year-old going ahead and walking into a car dealership and going ahead and being like, yeah, no, I want to buy a car, but they don't have a driver's license or anything. I mean, ultimately, in that circumstance, it's, ultimately, as much as the car dealer would end up having a level of culpability, because, them having to go through all the details to, make sure that the sale would be legal and that they had everything needed, like, for example, full driver's license, capability of being able to have the car insured before pulling it out of the lot, also, that 15-year-old ended up going ahead and coercing consent to be able to buy the vehicle, because of the factor that ultimately they didn't admit that they weren't of the age to be able to go ahead and buy said vehicle, which could end up going ahead and putting the car dealer's entire business in jeopardy.